As we ring this bell, we come together as one to affirm the peace that we hope for this world. We recognize that this place that we love is the ancestral land of the Yavapai people. And as we gather and enjoy the following music, let us be reminded of the wider world that we consider home. Good morning. Welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Prescott, Arizona. I'm Suki Jones, your worship associate today. We extend a warm welcome to all. We're glad you're able to join us this morning, and we hope you are in good health. We extend a special welcome to our guest minister this morning, Reverend Denise Tracy. She was ordained in 1947 as the 8th woman in the UU ministry at that time. She has served as a campus minister, interim minister, and parish minister from Connecticut to California and places in between, as well as with the UUA and as a consultant. Her biography says she retired in 2014, but I don't think that's anywhere near the truth. Reverend Denise is regularly called upon to officiate at weddings and other ceremonies and to deliver the message at UU services. In fact, she already participated in one service this morning already. She also serves as a police chaplain for the Kane County Sheriff's Office in Illinois, where she lives with her husband of 35 years, Bill Decker. Welcome, Reverend Denise. We want to stay connected, so please join us for the breakout rooms after the service. They are a great opportunity to chat with other congregants in small groups, or stay in the main Zoom after the service for a discussion with Reverend Denise. If you are joining us for the first time, please check out our website for more information at prescottuu.org. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Although we are physically apart, we are still in community, and we continue with some of our meetings and activities virtually. So please continue to check the Weekly Peek, our website, and Reverend Patty's videos for announcements. Join our regular weekly Zoom meetings, the Wednesday morning Politics and Religion Forum, Wednesday afternoon storytelling, and the Friday lunch with the minister. You'll find connection information and other announcements in the order of service that you received via email this morning. We begin our worship time in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Today's Chalice Lighting reading comes from the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists, a network of UU organizations representing 34 nations, reminding us that friendship knows no borders. These words are offered by the Sociedad Unitaria Universalista de España, the Unitarian Universalist Society of Spain. Lighting this chalice, we invoke the presence of love in our hearts, to share it today among us, and then spread it to the world. Therefore, let nobody feel a stranger in this circle, and may all feel welcome. Al encender este cáliz, invocamos la presencia del amor en nuestros corazones, para compartirlo hoy entre nosotros y propagarlo después al mundo. Así pues, que nadie se sienta extraño en este círculo y que todos sean bienvenidos. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage, in gratitude for this beloved community. Please join in our opening hymn, Spirit of Life.
Of compassion,
Please join me as we say our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth, its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now Reverend Denise has a special story for us during this time for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you. I love Unitarian Universalism and I love Unitarian Universalists, and I especially like to research Unitarian Universalists who have gone before us. And I have something that my husband gave me for Christmas a few years ago, and it's Susan B. Anthony's signature with her picture and her birth and death dates. She was a Unitarian Universalist from Rochester, New York, and I'm going to put her over there. And she was a wonderful, wonderful, creative, vibrant person. And when she was young, she was educated, and there weren't that many schools for girls, although her father felt it was important. And she became a teacher, and she noticed that she earned half of what the salary of a man was. And so this began her journey. It was a journey of fairness and equality. And what I loved is that at one point, Susan B. Anthony got together 17 of her friends, and she said, I pay taxes, I own a house. And so she and her 17 friends went and voted. And they invalidated the whole election for that county. And she was arrested. So just know that there are people who have gone before us who have had voting issues. But Susan B. Anthony decided that she wanted to make equality and fairness the central part of her life. In 1851, she went to a conference in Seneca Falls about the abolition of slavery, and she met somebody who became her best friend for her whole life. And here are Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Now, they were, you could kind of say, cut from the same cloth. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, when she was a child, she was reading the Bible, and she decided that whole parts of the Bible were not female friendly. So she took her dad's Bible and she cut out all of the parts that were mean to women. And when she was done, there wasn't much left. Her dad was pretty upset about it. But when she met Susan B. Anthony, they were absolutely simpatico. They became partners. They formed the National Women's Suffrage Association. They became editors of a women's newspaper called The Revolution, and they became a team. They were an inseparable force. Susan B. Anthony was single, and so therefore she could travel. And so she was the organizer and the strategist, and she gave all the speeches all over the United States. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the mother of 7 young children, and she found it very difficult to travel. Her husband was a lawyer for the abolitionist cause, but she stayed at home and she did all of the writing of Susan B. Anthony's speeches that she would deliver. And the two of them, they just said that what their purpose was, and listen to this, they were friends for over 51 years, and this is what Elizabeth Cady Stanton said. It is 51 years since we first met, and we have been busy through every one of those years, stirring up the world to recognize the rights of women. They said that they were against slavocrats, against sexocrats, we would call them genderocrats, and against the corporophobic, the colorophobics. And they just took on every issue of unfairness for their whole lifetime. They were best friends, and they just enjoyed each other so much and worked together. Now, I will tell you that if you are a woman, or if you know a woman who has voted, you have to thank Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, because they both died and neither of them ever got to legally vote. And I have a ritual that when I step into the voting booth, I say a prayer of thanksgiving to these two women whose friendship gave me the right to vote. And I think of them quite fondly, because without their work, we women would not have the vote. And so I tell this story or talk about them because voting is an issue these days in many of our cities and states and across our country. And we need to know that this has happened before, it is going on now, and it will happen in the future. And so we need to be like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and make some friends who are for equality and go out there and, as John Lewis would say, cause some really good trouble. So the next time you enter the voting booth, say thank you to Susan B. and Elizabeth, and remember that they went before us so that we could vote. That's just a little message for today.
Thank you, Reverend Denise. That was a good story. Our tradition of joys and concerns may be different now, but we still continue to struggle with sorrows and to find joys we celebrate. Today, we especially remember Richard Mauer, who passed away this week. We knew him as an artist, but he was a master cabinet maker. And did you know he crafted the office furniture for Richard Nixon? Born in Yugoslavia in 1935, Richard shared with us his stories, reminding us of history that should not be forgotten. There will be a message coming out later today about Wednesday's memorial service for Richard. Let us pause for a moment of silence. For all the concerns and joys not spoken aloud today, may our spirit embrace you and our love fill your heart. So may it be. Please sing these words of comfort. This is the time in our service when we traditionally take the offering. To give during this distance time, please go to prescottuu.org. On the bottom left-hand side, click on the word donate to contribute. The link is also available in the chat on this video. We also give back to the greater community during this time through our Seeds of Support program. During the month of August, our recipient is Empty Bowls. Please read about them in your order of service and in the newsletter, and enjoy the following video about this event.
This year is the 24th annual Empty Bowls event. It will be held in person on the Courthouse Square from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on September 12th. Last year's event had to go virtual because of COVID, with drive-by bowl pickup and many activities online. This year, we are taking the best of those virtual ideas and combining them with the in-person event to create a 2-week hybrid event. Follow the link in today's announcements to see all the details on the Empty Bowls website. This year's creative volunteers have also set up a wonderful display in the Prescott Library Viewery. Please visit the library to see it. You can also contact Norma Meyer to volunteer, and we hope you will give to Empty Bowls through this month's Seeds of Support.
Now, take a moment to embrace the feelings of connection and community that we have when we gather each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. What is given in love is received in gratitude. Blessed be. And now we turn to Reverend Denise for today's readings.
Before I do the two readings, I would just like to lift up prayers for the people who are experiencing the fires in the West and the storm coming into New Orleans and the rescue efforts in Afghanistan. I'm mindful of all of those kinds of things, and the people who are experiencing that are our friends. The first reading this morning, the author is unknown, and it is called The Window. And Grandma Moses has a quote at the beginning of this, and it says, "And life is what we make it, always has been, always will be." There were once two men, both seriously ill, in the same small room of a great hospital. Quite a small room. It had one window looking out on the world. One of the men, as part of his treatment, was allowed to sit up in bed for an hour in the afternoon, something to do with draining the fluid from his lungs. His bed was next to the window, but the other man had to spend all of his time flat on his back. Every afternoon, when the man next to the window was propped up for his hour, he would pass the time by describing what he could see outside. The window apparently overlooked a park where there was a lake. There were ducks and swans in the lake, and children came to throw them bread and sail model boats. Young lovers walked hand in hand beneath the trees, and there were flowers and stretches of grass, games of softball. And at the back, behind the fringes of trees, was a fine view of the city skyline. The man on his back would listen to the other man describe all of this, enjoying every minute. He heard how a small child nearly fell into the lake and how beautiful the girls were in their summer dresses. His friends' descriptions eventually made him feel he could almost see what was happening outside. Then one fine afternoon, the thought struck him, why should the man next to the window have all the pleasure of seeing what was going on? Why shouldn't he get the chance? He felt ashamed, but the more he tried not to think like that, the worse he wanted a change. He'd do anything. And one night, as he stared at the ceiling, the other man suddenly woke up, coughing and choking, his hands groping for the button that would bring the nurse running. But the man watched without moving, even when the sound of breathing stopped in the bed next to him. In the morning, the nurse found the other man dead and quietly took his body away. As soon as it seemed decent, the man asked if he could be switched to the bed next to the window. So they moved him, tucked him in, and made him quite comfortable. The minute they left, he propped himself up on one elbow painfully, laboriously, and looked out the window. It faced a brick wall. The second reading was written by Melody McCarty, and it's called An Act of Kindness for a Broken Heart. And it has a quote at the beginning of the reading by Unitarian Universalist Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. My husband, Hanuk, and I wrote a book, Acts of Kindness, How to Create a Kindness Revolution, which has generated much interest across America. This story was shared with us by an anonymous caller during a radio talk show in Chicago. "Hi, Mommy, what are you doing?" asked Susie. "I'm making a casserole for Mrs. Smith next door," said her mother. "Why?" asked Susie, who was only 6 years old. "Because Mrs. Smith is very sad. She lost her daughter and she has a broken heart. We need to take care of her for a little while." "Why, Mommy?" "You see, Susie, when someone is very, very sad, they have trouble doing the little things like making dinner or other chores. Because we're part of a community and Mrs. Smith is our neighbor, we need to do some things to help her. Mrs. Smith won't ever be able to talk to her daughter or hug her or do all those wonderful things that mommies and daughters do together. You are a very smart girl, Susie. Maybe you'll think of some way to help take care of Mrs. Smith." Susie thought seriously about this challenge and how she could do her part in caring for Mrs. Smith. A few minutes later, Susie knocked on Mrs. Smith's door. After a few moments, Mrs. Smith answered the knock with a "Hi, Susie." Susie noticed that Mrs. Smith didn't have the familiar musical quality about her voice when she greeted someone. Mrs. Smith also looked as if she might have been crying because her eyes were watery and swollen. "What can I do for you, Susie?" asked Mrs. Smith. "My mommy says that you lost your daughter and that you're very, very sad with a broken heart." Susie held out her hand shyly. In it was a Band-Aid. "This is for your broken heart." Mrs. Smith gasped, choking back her tears. She knelt down and hugged Susie. Through the tears, she said, "Thank you, darling girl. This will help a lot." Mrs. Smith accepted Susie's act of kindness and took it one step further. She purchased a small key ring with a plexiglass picture frame, the ones designed to carry keys and proudly display a family portrait at the same time. Mrs. Smith placed Susie's Band-Aid in the frame to remind herself to heal a little every time she sees it. It has become her symbol for healing, while not forgetting the joy and love she experienced with her daughter. May a blessing be found on these readings. And now we're going to have a musical meditation before the sermon.
Won't you be my friend? Won't you be my friend? Won't you take my hand? Won't you take my hand? Won't you come right here? Won't you come right here? And beside me stand. And beside me stand. Won't you be my friend? Won't you be my friend? Won't you dry my tears? Won't you dry my tears? Won't you make me laugh? Won't you make me laugh? We'll be friends for years. We'll be friends for years. We're different on the outside, it's plain to see. Just one look can tell you from me. But look on the inside and we're both the same. We're only people with different names. So won't you be my friend? Won't you be my friend? Won't you take my hand? Won't you take my hand? Won't you come right here? Won't you come right here? And beside me stand. And beside me stand. Won't you be my friend? Won't you be my friend? Won't you dry my tears? Won't you dry my tears? Won't you make me laugh? Won't you make me laugh? We'll be friends for years. We'll be friends for years.
How lovely. In 1976, when I moved to Greater Lansing, Michigan to begin my first parish ministry, I was given an office from which to conduct that ministry. It was the first office I had ever had. I thought carefully about what I wanted this office to communicate. There was a desk and a chair, of course. There were 2 chairs with a table for a conversation area. There was a space on the wall between the 2 chairs, and the question was what to place there to allow people to feel comfortable. I selected a plaque I found with these words by George Eliot. Friendship is the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but to pour them all out just as they are, chaff and grain together, knowing that a faithful hand will take and sift them, keeping what is worth keeping, and then with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. When a few weeks later, a reporter came to interview me, my photo was taken for the newspaper next to that plaque. The plaque still expresses a sentiment that I love. This year has been a year of strangeness. Captive in our homes, afraid to breathe or to touch or to hug, we have stepped away from the interpersonal intimacy that we once participated in so casually. I hugged a friend last week. We had both been vaccinated, and we decided it was safe. We took a deep breath, held it, turned our faces away from each other, opened our arms, and stepped toward each other, and then said, hug, which we did. When we separated, we both had tears in our eyes. I know that eventually, we will stop extending our elbows or doing a fist bump when greeting one another, and that we will once again hold hands at the end of worship, hug, walk arm in arm, and shake hands when meeting people. But right now, we are in a time of extreme weirdness. The question is to hug or not hug, to extend a hand or to bump fists or elbows. There is one thing that I have discovered in this pandemic that has been and is a priceless gift, one I will always be thankful for, and it is quite simply this. While trapped in my home, I began calling people that were dear to me. When I began calling, the conversations were short check-ins. Hi, how are you? What's new? But as the months continued, the conversations grew longer and deeper. The phone would ring or I would dial and my husband would say, who? And I would say, Gloria, Kathy, or Flavia, or Anne, or Barbara. And he would get up and go do something, mouthing, see you in an hour. I also began inviting these friends to join worship wherever I was preaching, and it has been interesting and fun. I have about 20 people I would have said 2 years ago were once close friends. Because of the pandemic, I would say that they have become closer to me than ever before. I have done much thinking about how my friendship life has improved during the pandemic, even because of it. During the pandemic, I have had time to take calls, to make calls, to create opportunities for Zoom or FaceTime conversations. In these conversations, I have had time to really listen, to hear, and to understand. I think I have become the type of friend I have always wanted to be, and perhaps had not been doing as good a job as I thought I was. I sometimes have been guilty of thinking while talking to friends of places I needed to be or things I needed to be doing. But since I had no place to go and nothing to do, the pandemic has helped me learn that my friends need my complete and undivided attention, and I need this from them as well. There has also been a new kind of chatting during this pandemic, telling stories, what new has happened to you, how are you coping with this latest part of COVID-19? What surprises have you experienced? Exchanging information about who is ill or even who has died. I suppose the gift of time has allowed me to focus on the importance of the relationship. In her book, Gift from the Sea, Anne Morrow Lindbergh uses these words to describe a good relationship. A good relationship has a pattern like a dance and is built on some of the same rules. The partners do not need to hold on tightly because they move confidently in the same pattern, intricate but gay and swift and free, like a country dance of Mozart's. To touch heavily would be to arrest the pattern and freeze the movement, to check the endlessly changing beauty of its unfolding. There is no place here for the heavy hand, only the barest touch in passing, now arm in arm, now face to face, now back to back. It does not matter which, because they are partners moving in the same rhythm, creating a pattern together and being invisibly nourished by it. The joy of such a pattern is not only the joy of creation or the joy of participation, it is also the joy of living in the moment. Lightness of touch and living in the moment are intertwined. I have always wanted this type of friendship, and my task-oriented and detailed focus on the lists I create has kept me from being the kind of joyful friend I have always wanted to be. In these last months, I have been like a giggly girl in high school. The phone rings and I stop whatever I am doing and I listen and laugh. The house I grew up in New England was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch. Our one phone, you remember when we had only one phone, was on the wall by the back door. It was a dial phone with a very long, curly cord. During the winter months or when it was cold, I never hung my coat up in the coat closet by the back door. Instead, I would put it on a chair in the kitchen right next to the phone. And when the phone was for me, I would slip my coat on and I would step out of doors and I would stand outside on the back porch talking privately to my friends. I stood out there in the rain and the sleet and the cold, and I loved every minute. I visited my sister recently, and she gave me a photo album with all of my high school friends' graduation pictures in it. She had found it in a closet somewhere. She lives in the house we grew up in. I looked at the pictures and I remembered talking on the phone with these folks. And sometimes, maybe this didn't happen to you, but it did to me, at the end of the conversation saying, "You hang up first," and the other person saying, "No, you hang up first." And it would go back and forth and back and forth. I remember at one point my dad was sitting in the kitchen and he got exasperated by the "no, you go first" conversation. And he said, "Let me save you both a lot of trouble and I'll hang up." And he did, click. And I went, "Dad." But how might friendship be spiritual? Webster's dictionary says spirituality is the quality of being concerned with the soul. The Cambridge Dictionary says spirituality involves deep feelings or beliefs. The more New Age loose leaf notebook sources say spirituality is the process of awakening, expanding, and helping the mind be free of fears and worries. And in doing this, allowing us to experience the inner peace and beauty of everyday life. Simply put, spirituality restores our faith and connection with both ourselves, others, and the world. But how might our friendships be spiritual? First, when we know we are loved, and when that is reciprocal, our faith in life is uplifted and renewed. Second, when we are truly loved, we are also able to look at ourselves honestly and be stronger and better able to live our purpose more fully. Third, when we can rest in the care of a friend and speak our minds, we can reconsider our actions. A good relationship has both velvet and sandpaper. Good relationships have to have both. And the best of our friends say to us, "You did what? What were you thinking?" And when we do, we are still loved for the mistakes we have made. Not everyone is meant to be our friend. If someone is hurtful or abusive, we must set limits and move on. There are lots of beautiful people in our world, and I want the best ones in my life. During the pandemic, I renewed relationships and they became as important to me as my friendships were when I was in middle school, when I stood out in the cold. to chat. I have had time to listen, to share, to rejoice, to confess, and to share in sorrows. The gift of the pandemic is learning how to do this all over again. The Irish poet John O'Donoghue says this of friendship: "A friend awakens your life in order to free the wild possibilities within you." In the reading called The Window, which was the first reading this morning, the patient by the window gives his friend a world of new visions and possibilities. The friend does not repay this gift kindly, and I often wonder how the second person lived with himself after he realized what had happened. In the second reading, the woman gives the nourishing gift of food, and her daughter gives a Band-Aid as a symbol of friendship. Over the past few months, I was re-diagnosed with breast cancer. During this time, my friends listened to me, cared for me, and they also kept me in line. One said to me when I was having a particularly hard day, "You have been here before, you've got this." Or another friend said, "Yes, it's tough what you're going through, and you are tougher." They did not allow me to sink into despair. What I have discovered is that friendship is both roots and wings. The best of friendships give us the grounding of roots, and like the poet O'Donoghue says, friendships also give us the wild possibilities, which are our wings. I remember at different times, each of my children complained to me about not having friends. I probably complained to my mother about the same thing. And I would say to them probably the same thing she said to me: the best way to get a friend is to be a friend. My kids would roll their eyes at me and go, "Mom." Same thing I probably did to my mom, and they would grouse. But the reality is, friendships are grand experiments in spirituality. There are schools that now have benches in the lunchroom or on the playground, and anyone who is feeling disconnected or lonely is to sit there. And it is a sign to everyone, here is someone who needs a friend. I hope church is a place for each of us to sit on the lonely bench, or to go to a person who is sitting on that bench and practice our spirituality by being and becoming a friend. May this be true for each of us. May we be surrounded with love that affirms, awakens, and releases our wildest possibilities. Amen, shalom, and blessed be. I'm now going to introduce the last hymn. My husband and I have a friend who lives in Silver Springs, Maryland, and she is a Unitarian Universalist. She was an usher at our wedding 40 years ago. So we've been friends with her for a long time. I officiated her wedding ceremony, and she had a beloved child who 2 years ago was killed in a car accident. And we all grieved the life of this young Anna, who was 27 years old. And as our friend Debbie went through her grief, she called me one morning and she said, "I had a dream and I woke up and I thought Anna's arms were around me and a song came to me in this dream and I wrote it down." And she said, "And I really like it. And the choir in Silver Springs is helping me put it in form so it can be used in worship." And she gave me permission to use it wherever I'm preaching. And so it's been from Maine to California and every place in between. The song is called Wrapped in Love. And from the sorrow came the love. And from the sadness came the creativity. And from the blessing of a beloved child came a dream and this song. So I hope that you'll enjoy it. It's called Wrapped in Love.
Well, when I'm feeling lonely in an awful way, I can wrap myself in love. When I don't know how to make it through another day, well, I can wrap myself in love. Ooh, wrapped in love. I wrap myself in love. Oh, wrapped in love. I wrap myself in love. Now when I'm sad and lonely and I fall away, oh, I can wrap myself in love. When I don't know how to make it through another day, well, I can wrap myself in love. Ooh, wrapped in love, I wrap myself in love. Oh, wrapped in love, well, I wrap myself in love. Now when my friend is hurting in an awful way, well, I can wrap my friend in love. When I don't know what to do, don't know what to say, well, I can wrap my friend in love. Ooh, wrapped in love, wrap my friend in love. Ooh, wrapped in love, I can wrap my friend in love. Take your fears and wrap them in love. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Take all your tears and wrap them in love. You know our world is suffering in an awful way. It's time to wrap our world in love. We can make it better each and every day if we just wrap our world in love. Ooh, wrapped in love. Let's wrap our world in love. Yeah, wrapped in love. Wrap our world in love. Now everybody now, ooh, wrapped in love. Ooh, wrapped in love. Ooh, wrapped in love. Now you can wrap yourself in love, and you can wrap your friends in love. Come on, let's wrap our world in love.
I hope you enjoyed that. Our closing words, and I want to ask you to do something. I can see whether or not you're doing this, so I'm going to watch. I want you to imagine the flame from the chalice at Suki's house and put it in your hands, and then I'm going to say 4 lines and I'm going to ask you to repeat them. And so hold the flame, imagine the flame in your hands, and repeat after me. May faith in the human community, may faith in the human community, and hope in human love, and hope in human love, keep us ever growing and changing, keep us ever growing and changing. Together, shalom, amen, and blessed be. And as the slide comes on to extinguish the chalice, at the end of keep holding the flame, and I will tell you what to do at the end of the slide with the words for the chalice. We extinguish this flame but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now I invite you to take the flame that you've been holding and fold it into your heart and imagine the nourishment of this community with you for the rest of this week until we meet again.
Thank you so much, Reverend Denise. I imagine that if we were all meeting in person, there would be hugs all around the room. I now invite everyone to take as much time as you wish to visit with your friends and visitors in the chat room. Stay online to be put in a chat, or remain in the main Zoom to join in discussion with Reverend Tracy.
Thanks, Suki.
Reverend Denise, excuse me.
All right, that's okay.
Our worship time has ended, and now our service begins.